Chapter 41. The Mysterious Ancient Scroll. After regrouping and fortifying their strength, the gods set out on a new mission to uncover more clues. Now, Nyxara, guided by her keen intuition as the goddess of darkness, led the group into a labyrinthine system of caverns buried deep underground. The cavern was pitch black, void of any natural light. Faintly glowing crystals embedded in the walls created an eerie atmosphere. The cold air carried the scent of ancient shadows. Nyxara felt the presence of something ancient and dangerous. "There's something we need here," she said, her voice calm but resolute. At the center of the cavern, Nyxara discovered a large stone altar etched with ancient symbols. Resting on the altar was a weathered scroll, shrouded in a faint black mist. As she approached, the mist stirred, forming ghostly shapes that flitted around the scroll. Alondra felt the overwhelming dark energy emanating from the object. This is no ordinary artifact. It holds immense power. Nyxara placed her hand on the scroll, and instantly, she was drawn into a shadowy realm where darkness consumed everything. Whispering voices echoed around her, reminding her of past failures and fears she had buried deep within. Within the illusion created by the scroll, Nyxara faced terrifying visions. Loved ones destroyed, losses she had endured, and herself lost in an inescapable abyss of darkness. The ghostly voices taunted her relentlessly. "You're nothing but a weakling," one icy voice hissed. "You couldn't save anyone. You were born to serve the shadows." Alondra quickly realized Nyxara was trapped in a psychological nightmare caused by the scroll. She called for Auren's help, and the eternal torch in his hands flared to life, illuminating the entire cavern. Alondra combined her light magic with a sealing spell, creating a protective circle around Nyxara. "Remember, darkness only holds power if you let it. You are stronger than this," she declared firmly. The light pierced into Nyxara's subconscious, dissolving the terrifying images. Gasping for air, Nyxara opened her eyes, her breathing heavy but her gaze steady once more. When the scroll was unsealed, the ancient runes glowed brightly, illuminating the cavern. Its contents revealed a shocking truth. The demons were not born as such, but were once gods themselves. Corrupted by ambition and envy, these ancient deities transformed into monsters to attain ultimate power. Malgrath, Umbra, Kaelisai, they were all once gods, Auren read aloud, his voice heavy with gravity. They serve as a warning of what we must never repeat. The scroll also detailed a unique sealing spell, capable of imprisoning demons for eternity. However, it required all the fragments and an immense source of power to perform. As the gods studied the scroll, a sudden attack erupted. Malgrath, aware of their presence, sent a legion of shadow minions to intercept them. Towering creatures with glowing red eyes and shadow-cloaked bodies charged toward the cavern entrance. Without hesitation, Ignis unleashed his flaming sword, setting the shadows ablaze. Zephyra joined in, conjuring tornadoes to drive the creatures back, while Solara summoned tree roots to entangle their foes. Auren stood in the center, protecting the scroll with a powerful light barrier. Alondra supported him by casting sealing spells to prevent any enemy from approaching the scroll. A fierce battle raged at the cavern's entrance. The shadow creatures multiplied endlessly, as if they were inexhaustible. Solian wielded the eternal hourglass to slow time, giving the gods a crucial advantage to fight back. "We can't keep the scroll here any longer," Solian urged, his voice tense with urgency. "We need to seal it immediately." After fending off the shadow army, the gods decided to seal the scroll to safeguard its contents. Auren, with Alondra's assistance, used the final fragment to create a luminous barrier around the scroll. "This is our only hope," Auren said. "We cannot let Malgrath get his hands on it." Solara placed a green sapling branch atop the barrier, a symbol of life and protection. "This is just the first step. The real battle is still ahead." Chapter 42. Internal Doubts. The gods' journey seemed to have stabilized after sealing the ancient scroll. But strange markings on the map and unusual activity in previously secure areas began to stir suspicion in Auren's mind. On a quiet night, he spread a large map across the stone table, the light from the eternal torch illuminating familiar symbols. Yet something felt off. "These are places we've never mentioned," Auren murmured, his piercing gaze fixed on the new symbols. They pointed to sensitive areas, places only the gods themselves knew about. Turning to Thalios, who sat nearby, Auren asked, "You've been with us long enough to know I don't question without reason. Is there something you're hiding, Thalios?" Thalios flinched at the unexpected question but quickly responded with a firm voice. You think I'm a traitor? Look at what I sacrificed in the primal world to save us. Why would I betray you after that? Thalios's denial did little to ease Auren's suspicions, and the tension quickly spread among the group. Meanwhile, in the shadows, Voren silently exercised his powers. He didn't appear directly, but whispered insidious words into the minds of the gods. Gallios is dangerous. He's leading you into a trap. Do you really think what you see is real? These ghostly, haunting whispers crept into everyone's thoughts, and despite their best efforts, the gods began doubting one another. Sensing the growing strain, Solien gathered the group in a large chamber, where the glow of his eternal hourglass created a fleeting sense of peace. Standing in the center, his voice was calm yet commanding. We've endured too much to get here, he said, but I can feel the cracks forming between us. If we don't address this now, the darkness won't need to attack. We'll destroy ourselves. Solien encouraged everyone to share their thoughts openly. When it was Thalios's turn, he refused to answer questions about his past. I did what was necessary to survive. That's all you need to know, he said coldly. Ignis, ever hot-tempered, couldn't contain himself. If you've got nothing to hide, why not tell the truth? The meeting devolved into a heated argument, forcing Solien to use his time magic to end it abruptly. As the group struggled to mend their relationships, Nyxara, gifted with a keen sensitivity to darkness, abruptly halted while they were crossing a shadowy valley. Stop, she commanded, her voice low yet authoritative. I can feel Voren's presence. He's not far from us. The gods immediately heightened their guard, but despite Nyxara's efforts, she couldn't pinpoint his exact location. The failure weighed heavily on her. He's everywhere and nowhere, Nyxara sighed, her eyes darkening. We're being watched. After days of relentless tension, an unexpected truth surfaced. On a quiet night, as the group rested, Auren secretly approached Thalios, demanding answers about his connection to Voren. After a long silence, Thalios finally admitted, Yes, I've met Voren. But not the way you think. Before he became a demon, he and I were allies. We fought side by side on a mission to protect a sacred temple, but betrayal from other gods pushed him into the darkness. He didn't fall because of ambition, but because he was driven to despair. Thalios's confession left Auren conflicted. He couldn't decide whether to fully trust his comrade. Elandra, with her compassion and wisdom, sought to mediate between Auren and Thalios. She approached each individually, listening and offering heartfelt advice. We can't let Voren win by tearing us apart, she said. If Thalios has something to say, let him speak. But we must also listen with open hearts. Even so, Elandra herself began to waver under Voren's whispered manipulations, questioning if her loyalty was truly placed in the right hands. Despite their fragile bonds, the gods decided to press on with their mission. They understood that pausing to resolve their disputes would cost them any chance of defeating Malgrath. Standing before the group, Auren's light from the eternal torch illuminated his face. We may not trust each other right now, but we must trust in our shared purpose. If we fail, this world will have no hope. Nyxara warned, Voren is waiting for us to make a mistake. He doesn't need to attack, he only needs us to destroy ourselves. The gods moved forward, carrying their doubts and unresolved secrets. Yet the light of their ultimate goal remained the one fire driving them onward. During their journey, they were ambushed by a group of Voren's shadowy minions. The battle was fierce, forcing the gods to work together to survive. Ignis and Zephyra. Ignis used his flames to push back the attackers, while Zephyra summoned powerful whirlwinds to shield the group. Auren and Solara. Auren's light weakened the enemies, while Solara's roots entangled and immobilized them. Thalios and Nyxara. Thalios wielded his divine trident to protect Nyxara, as she unleashed her shadow magic in a devastating counterattack. When the battle ended, they realized that despite their suspicions, they still needed each other to survive. Solara's voice carried through the silence, filled with emotion. We've lost so much, but as long as we don't give up, I believe we can save this world. The group responded in unison, their eyes shining with renewed determination. Chapter 43. Voren. Darkness within the light. After a tense ambush, the group of deities paused in a safe zone to consider their next move. Solaxnu, ever calm and strategic, proposed an unexpected idea. Opening the time gate to uncover Voren's past. We can't keep fighting in the dark, Solien said, his voice low but commanding. If we understand what led Voren to fall, we might find a way to defeat him. Auren agreed but cautioned. We must be extremely careful. Altering the past could have unimaginable consequences. Elandra glanced at the eternal hourglass in Solian's hand, her expression a mix of curiosity and worry. Can we even endure what we're about to witness? There's only one way to find out, Solian replied, before tracing a complex circle of light in the air. The time gate opened with dazzling light and an ethereal echo. As they stepped through, the air seemed lighter, as if they had entered a world unburdened by time. They arrived in a vast square where deities gathered. At the center stood a colossal temple with ivory-white columns, symbols of peace and authority. Auren, still a deity, stood beside Auren. The two engaged in an animated discussion about protecting the worlds from a looming threat.
Do you see that?
Barrett, Auren whispered to the group, his eyes fixed on his former ally. He was once a strong and wise leader.
From a distance, the group observed a gradual change in Voren. During a meeting with other deities, he presented an ambitious plan, using ancient relics to solidify the god's control over all realms. We cannot leave the worlds as free as they are now, Voren argued, his voice strong and persuasive. Chaos will lead to destruction. Only we can maintain order. However, many deities opposed him. We are not rulers. We were created to protect, not to dominate, an elder deity said, his stern gaze fixed on Vorshenren. The opposition angered Vorshenren, though he said nothing. His eyes betrayed his frustration and resentment. Years later, a pivotal event unfolded. A group of deities, fearing Voren's growing power and ambition, orchestrated a trap to seal him away. They used a dark artifact to drain part of his strength, leaving him weakened and disgraced in the council. The group watched in silence as Voren fell to his knees, his eyes filled with despair. We once thought him invincible, Auren said, his voice trembling.
But it was us who drove him into darkness. Elandra turned away, tears streaming down her face. Betrayal never leads to anything good. This is where the tragedy began. Quote, not long after, Voren vanished. Guided by the flow of time, the group discovered he had sought out a forbidden sanctuary of the gods. There, Voren summoned an ancient dark entity, pledging his loyalty in exchange for power.
As the dark entity granted him immense strength, Voren abandoned his divine form. His once golden eyes grew cold, and his radiant skin darkened with shadows. Emerging from the sanctuary, he possessed unmatched power and a growing hatred for the gods who had betrayed him. Returning to a safe point in the timeline, the group's eyes were filled with pain. What they had witnessed not only revealed Voren's past, but also forced them to confront the gods' own mistakes. We created him, Auren said, his voice heavy. We sowed the seeds of darkness, Solara tried to comfort him. But we can still make things right. The past cannot be changed, but the future can. Even Solian, usually the voice of reason, showed signs of uncertainty. I always believed the timeline could not be disturbed. Now, I'm not sure we can remain detached from these tragedies forever.
Solian warned that they couldn't stay in the past any longer. Every moment we linger destabilizes the timeline. We must return before we cause irreparable harm. Upon returning to the present, the group carried new knowledge of Voren's fall. However, tension among them lingered. Auren turned to Thalios, his gaze sharp.
You were there.
You know everything that happened. Why did you never speak of it? Thalios avoided Auren's stare.
I've hidden nothing, but not every story needs to be told.
Thalios's words only deepened the group's mistrust. Even so, they knew the final battle was approaching, and they could not afford to let their doubts weaken them. Chapter 44. The Assault on the Ocean Palace. The undersea palace of Thalios, protected by powerful barriers and illuminated by giant pearls, had always been a beacon of serenity. But today, the light from the pearls dimmed ominously.
Standing in the grand hall, Thalios sensed a deep disturbance in the ocean's flow. The waters are no longer calm, he said, his voice low and tense. A storm is coming, but it is not of nature. At that moment, a black mist rose from the ocean depths, engulfing the waters around the palace. Small marine creatures became ferocious, launching themselves against the palace's protective walls. Emerging from the ocean's dark depths, Kalis arrived with an army of corrupted sea creatures. His massive, half-human, half-fish form glistened menacingly, and his fiery red eyes burned like hellfire. In his hand, he wielded a staff encrusted with glowing black stones, emitting waves of destructive energy that slammed against the palace's barriers. "Thalios, I have come to claim what belongs to the darkness," Caelus roared, his voice like waves crashing against cliffs. Thalios brandished his trident, summoning a massive whirlpool. "You will not set foot here, Caelus. The sea is my domain." The clash began with ferocity. Caelus's army of corrupted sea creatures surged into the palace, attacking every corner. Thalios summoned living coral roots and seaweed from the ocean floor to ensnare the invaders, but the creatures relentlessly broke through the defenses. Caelus swung his staff, creating waves of dark energy that battered the pearl walls, causing cracks to spread through the palace. As the situation grew dire, Alondra and Solara entered through the main gates. Alondra used her light magic to purify the waters, weakening the corrupted creatures. Meanwhile, Solara called upon pure marine life to shield the terrified citizens. As Caelus's forces overwhelmed the defenders, Auren appeared, carrying the eternal torch. The radiant light from the torch not only illuminated the murky waters, but also repelled Caelus's darkness. "Do you truly believe the darkness can rule the seas?"
Auren's voice rang out, cutting through the chaos. He activated the summoning dawn spell, unleashing a beam of light that pierced through the shadows and forced Caelus to retreat momentarily. But Caelus was not easily defeated, retaliating with a powerful wave of black energy that shook the entire palace.
After hours of fierce fighting, Caelus was finally pushed back. However, he achieved his goal. Upon inspecting the palace, the gods discovered that the artifact vault had been breached. One of the crucial fragments was missing. Thalios entered the damaged vault, his face filled with fury as he surveyed the destruction. "They've been here, but how?" he murmured, his voice strained. Elandra picked up a fragment of the vault door, noticing a familiar sigil, Voron's mark. "He wanted us to know he was here," she said grimly.
As the gods regrouped to assess the damage, a report from a sea citizen added complexity to the situation. They claimed to have seen Thalios near the vault shortly before the attack began. Auren turned to Thalios, suspicion flashing in his eyes. "Is there something you'd like to explain, Thalios?" Thalios's expression remained cold. "I don't need to justify myself. I defended this place with all my strength." "If you wish to doubt me, go ahead." A heavy silence fell over the group. No one spoke further, but the tension between them grew palpable. Despite the lingering doubts, the gods knew they couldn't allow internal discord to weaken them. Auren, stepping into his role as leader, addressed the group. "We've lost a fragment, but that does not mean we've been defeated," he declared, his voice resonating through the grand hall. "We must act swiftly to protect what remains." Solian proposed using time magic to locate the stolen fragment. However, this spell required the synchronized efforts of the entire group, challenging task given the current strain in their relationships.
The gods unanimously agreed to perform a special ritual to temporarily sacrifice a portion of their power to strengthen the protective barrier around the remaining fragments. Thalios, despite the suspicions cast upon him, volunteered to contribute his divine energy. "If this is the only way to save the world, I will do it willingly," he said solemnly. The gods entered the ritual chamber, where the remaining fragments glowed brightly, a stark reminder of the immense responsibility they bore. The light filled the room, symbolizing hope amid the looming darkness.
Chapter 45. The Mystical Sealing Ritual. After the fierce battle at the Oceanic Palace, the gods retreated to their temporary sanctuary in Silara's ancient forest. Though they had repelled Caelus, the loss of a shard and lingering internal conflicts hung heavily over the group. Alondra stood by a stream, her hands trembling as she examined the small cracks forming on the remaining shard. Solara approached and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "It's not over yet. We still have time to make things right." Auren, seated nearby, studied a strategic map, while Solian pored over the ancient scroll. "But without completing the sealing spell, we cannot protect what's left," Solian said, his tone grave. Nyxara and Alondra decided to test the sealing spell on a weakened shadow creature they had captured. The small creature, its form shrouded in faint black mist, thrashed violently within Solara's magical cage. Nyxara used her shadow magic to bind the creature, while Alondra formed a ring of light for the seal. But just as the seal neared completion, the creature let out a piercing screech, shattering the barrier. "Our coordination isn't strong enough," Nyxara said, her sharp gaze unwavering. Alondra lowered her head. It's not just that. Light and darkness alone cannot accomplish everything. After observing the failed test, Solien returned to the ancient scroll. He meticulously examined the notes on sealing spells, each archaic symbol illuminated by the light of Auren's torch. "We need more than this," he said after a long silence. "The sealing spell can only succeed when all elements converge. Light, darkness, wind, fire, and nature. Without one, balance cannot exist." His words left the group in silence. They realized that success would require flawless cooperation among all members. Amid the contemplative silence, Thalios stood up, holding an old page from the scroll. "I've seen this ritual in ancient texts. It requires a temporary sacrifice of our divine powers to create a powerful sealing barrier." Ignis frowned. "Sacrifice our powers? How long will we be weakened?" "Not long," Thalios replied, his gaze steady. "But it's the only way forward." Despite lingering doubts about Thalios, the gods agreed to attempt the ritual. On a high hill under the starlight, the gods began the ritual. Each member stood at a corner of a perfect circle, with a stone table at the center, holding the ancient scrolls. Auren recited the ritual's incantation, his voice resonating. "We unite not just our strength but our minds and souls. Darkness shall be imprisoned by light. Fury shall be calmed by balance." Each god channeled their energy into the center. Light, darkness, wind, fire, and nature fused into a massive vortex of power. As the ritual progressed, each member faced a strange psychological trial. Nyxara confronted a shadowy reflection of herself, accusing her of being the cause of destruction. Ignis saw his flames flicker and die, leaving only ash. He wrestled with the fear of losing his power. Solara heard the cries of the forest, blaming her for failing to protect nature from devastation. Despite these challenges, they persevered through their resolve and faith in their mission. When the ritual concluded, a brilliant light illuminated the hill. A sealing barrier formed around the shadow creature, binding it so it could no longer escape. "This is only the first step," Solien said, his voice tinged with caution. "We must practice this many times before we're ready to face Malgrath." The gods exchanged determined glances, knowing that even greater trials lay ahead. As they prepared to leave, the ancient scroll emitted a strange whisper. Solien opened it to find new words inscribed. "The cost of power is not just time, but also the soul. Are you ready to pay the price?" The warning cast a heavy shadow over the group. Though they had achieved their first success, the gods knew they were treading dangerously close to their limits. Chapter 46. The Wrath of Caelus. Night cloaked Solara's sacred forest, the wind howling through the ancient trees as if warning of an impending doom. In the distance, faint flickers of fire emerged, spreading across the pitch-black sky. Gradually, the horizon blazed red with the ominous glow of the deadly black flames. Caelus appeared, his entire being engulfed in consuming fire. Each step he took left behind molten lava, making the forest tremble in fear. This frail forest won't shield you from me," Caelus roared, his voice thundering like a storm. Behind him, his black fire demons, twisted and grotesque creatures, screeched and rampaged, destroying everything in their path. Solara stood at the edge of the forest, her vine-like hair swaying in the sulfur-laden wind. Her eyes blazed with fury. With a single wave of her hand, she invoked the spell, Ancient Tree Spirits. Giant trees awakened, their roots surging from the ground like massive arms, forming a barricade to block Caelus's army. "This is a sanctuary of life," Solara declared, her voice calm but filled with unyielding power. "You shall not trespass." The black fire army crashed into the wooden barrier, flames engulfing everything in their path. Yet Solara did not falter. She poured all her strength into the forest, making new trees rise to replace the fallen, holding the invaders at bay. Caelus, standing atop a small volcano formed by his destruction, laughed maniacally. "Do you think your feeble trees can stand against me? Watch as my flames consume everything." Raising his massive arms, he summoned a black firestorm from the heavens. The forest canopy ignited, and thick black smoke billowed, obscuring the sky. Solara felt nature's strength fading. Closing her eyes, she cast the spell, Song of the Deep Forest, conjuring light rains to quell the fires. Caelus leaped down from the volcano, his enormous frame glowing with black fire. He unleashed a powerful strike, shattering the barrier of trees. Solara retaliated immediately, sending massive vines to bind him. However, the searing heat of his flames incinerated everything, forcing her to retreat. "You can't protect this forest forever, Solara," Caelus shouted, his fiery eyes locked on her. As Solara's strength waned, a brilliant crimson light tore through the black smoke. Ignis appeared, the flames surrounding his sword blazing fiercely. "Ignis, you dare challenge me, the bearer of annihilating blackfire?" Caelus sneered, his voice dripping with mockery. Ignis remained silent. With a swift swing of his sword, he unleashed a torrent of red flames toward Caelus. The red and black fires collided, resulting in a deafening explosion that shook the entire forest. Caelus laughed wildly and launched relentless attacks on Ignis, forcing him to step back. Each of Caelus's strikes carried destructive force, pushing Ignis into a defensive position. "Your flames are but a flickering candle compared to mine," Caelus taunted, delivering a powerful blow that sent Ignis flying. Elandra arrived with Solara, her hands glowing with radiant light that soothed Ignis's injuries. Despite her exhaustion, Solara summoned tiny saplings to heal him further. "Ignis, we cannot let Caelus win," Elandra urged, her eyes shining with determination. "Your strength can defeat him, but we must work together." Ignis rose, his eyes blazing with resolve. "My flames have never been extinguished. Together, we will show him true power." Ignis charged at Caelus once more, his red flames burning stronger than ever. Solara created a sanctuary within the forest, where trees continually regenerated, providing the group with renewed energy. Elandra used her light magic to weaken the power of the Blackfire. The battle raged for hours, the forest engulfed in explosions and dazzling lights. Ignis unleashed the spell Inferno Tempest, combining it with Solara's Breath of the Forest, creating a devastating attack that forced Caelus to retreat. Caelus, realizing he could no longer fight on, roared in fury. "You will pay for this defiance!" He vanished, leaving behind a ravaged forest. As the battle ended, Solara knelt amidst the charred forest, her eyes filled with tears. She could feel the loss of nature, the countless small creatures that could not be saved. "Ignis, everything has been destroyed," she said, her voice heavy with sorrow. Ignis placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Solara, this is not the end. There is still hope. You fought with all your heart, and that will help this forest be reborn." Elandra knelt beside them, her hands glowing with a gentle light. A small sprout emerged from the ashes. "This is only the beginning. We will fight for life." Solara stood, her eyes burning with determination. "I will not allow Caelus or anyone else to destroy this world. Nature will rise again, stronger than ever." Chapter 47. The Whisper of Division. As night descended, the central temple was engulfed in an eerie silence. Darkness crept across the landscape, subtle but menacing, as though the very air had grown heavy. From a distance, Vorin, the demon of betrayal, watched the gods with a cold smirk. You think you are stronger than the shadows?" he whispered, his voice dripping with malice. Wisps of invisible sound waves emanated from his hands, weaving through the air and penetrating the minds of the gods. Zephyra suddenly felt a weight of discontent settle in her heart. Why must we always follow Ignis's plans? He always assumes he's right, but in our previous battles his fire only brought destruction. Ignis spun around, his fiery eyes blazing. "Destruction? What has your wind done besides blow ash into the faces of our enemies? Without my fire you would have been swallowed by the darkness long ago." Their argument escalated, like a volcano on the verge of eruption. Meanwhile, the other gods began feeling the tendrils of doubt spreading among them. Solara glanced around anxiously, attempting to mediate, but her voice went unheard amidst the rising tension. Recognizing the deteriorating situation, Solian raised the eternal hourglass high. The sands within ceased their flow, and time abruptly came to a halt. In the ensuing stillness, his calm, resonant voice broke through. "Look into the future the darkness desires for you." A vivid image materialized in the air, a grim vision of what would come to pass if the gods remained divided. One by one, they were defeated by the enemy, their realms left in ruin. Now, the land of light faded into darkness. Solara's forests turned to ash, Thalios's oceans dried up, and shadow reigned supreme. "Your enemy is not each other," Solian declared, his piercing gaze sweeping over them.
This is exactly what Voren wants. Without unity, we will fail, and all will be lost.
Zephyra and Ignis exchanged glances, their expressions softening.
I'm sorry, Zephyra murmured. I let doubt cloud my judgment.
Ignis nodded solemnly.
We need to be stronger. We can't let him manipulate us.
Meanwhile, Nyxara, attuned to the currents of darkness, detected Voren's presence near the central temple. She ventured into the shadows, using her lullaby of illusion to trace his location.
Voren is here, she announced, her voice sharp and determined.
He's hiding in the darkness, continuing to sow discord.
Auren stepped forward, the eternal torch in his hand illuminating the dim surroundings.
We need a plan to draw him into the light.
Nyxara proposed, using her powers to create a distraction, luring Vorshin to a location where Auren's light could trap him. With Solien's help, she conjured a network of illusions designed to make Vorshin believe he was gaining the upper hand. Realizing Nyxara's ploy, Voren let out a furious roar, his translucent shadowy wings spreading wide. You think light can bind me? I am the shadow within your souls. You cannot escape me. Auren stepped forward, the eternal torch blazing with unrelenting intensity. Darkness exists only where light fails. And I am here to ensure that never happens. The two clashed in a brief but intense battle. Light and shadow collided, sending dazzling sparks across the temple grounds. Realizing he couldn't win, Voren retreated into the shadows, leaving behind a chilling warning. Your doubts will destroy you soon enough.
With Voren gone, the gods regrouped in the central temple. The air grew still, but the fractures in their unity remained evident. Solara stepped forward, her voice gentle yet firm. We cannot let doubt cloud our purpose. Without trust, the darkness will prevail. Alondra nodded, her eyes shining with resolve. We are the only ones who can stand against the darkness. Trust is our greatest strength.
Auren looked at each of them, his expression soft but resolute.
From this moment on, we fight not just for our mission, but for one another. No more conflicts, no more doubts. We are the light, and the shadows will never divide us. One by one, the gods nodded in agreement, their hearts united by a renewed sense of purpose and determination.
Chapter 48.
The Counterattack Plan. The Temple of Time shimmered with ethereal silver light, reflections from Solien's eternal hourglass dancing across the walls. Each god stepped inside, their eyes filled with determination but shadowed by unease. Standing at the center, Solien's silver cloak rippled like a flowing stream of time itself. His calm voice filled the room. We are drawing closer to the final battle. Malgrath, consumed by his insatiable greed, has fortified himself in an impenetrable stronghold. However, the ancient scroll we recovered may open a gateway to his domain.
Auren stepped forward, the light from his eternal torch illuminating the room. With head. We must seize every advantage. Malgrath has plunged the mortal world into chaos. If we do not act, all hope will be lost.
Nyxara, lingering quietly in the shadows, spoke. Opening the gateway is no simple task. The scroll's power is unstable. Should it fall into the enemy's hands, the consequences would be catastrophic. Solien nodded. That is why Alondra will safeguard the scroll. Alondra stared at Solien, her eyes a mixture of surprise and anxiety. Me? But I'm just a mortal mage. How can I possibly protect something so important? Auren approached, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder.
You have shown courage and dedication. We trust you, Alondra.
Though she bowed her head in acknowledgement, Alondra felt the weight of the responsibility pressing on her. As night fell, she stepped outside the temple, gazing at the star-filled sky. The scroll's whispers echoed in her mind, a constant reminder of her daunting task. Can I do this? She murmured, her eyes lost in the vastness of the heavens. Nyxara appeared beside her, her voice warm yet firm. You don't have to do this alone. We are here to support you. Your belief in yourself will be your greatest strength. The next day, under Auren's leadership, the gods gathered in a vast field where light and shadow intertwined. Auren's commanding voice rang out. We need more than individual strength. We must learn to work as one. This is a battle where division has no place. Solara and Zephyra trained to merge the powers of wind and nature, creating devastating wide-area attacks. Thalios and Ignis combined water and fire, crafting explosive assaults to pressure their enemies. Alondra, guided by Nyxara, practiced wielding her light magic to neutralize darkness. Though clumsy at first, she gradually mastered the ability, forming powerful rings of light capable of shielding her allies. By the end of the day, the gods regrouped, their sweat-soaked faces shining with hope.
A rare smile crossed Auren's face. With this strength and unity, I believe we can prevail.
As night descended, a crimson light suddenly flared in the Temple of Time. Malgrath's image appeared in an illusion, his cunning smile stretching across his face. Do you truly believe these feeble efforts can defeat me?
His voice echoed through the temple, dripping with malice. Come and face me if you dare, but remember, the price of failure will be everything you hold dear. His image dissipated, leaving the room steeped in tension. Ignis clenched his fists, flames flickering in his eyes. I can't stand his arrogance any longer. We must act now. Solian remained calm. No, we need time to prepare him. He wants us to act recklessly. Auren nodded, his gaze unwavering. Malgrath will learn that light never fades. We will come, but on our terms. The group began preparations for the final journey. The ancient scroll was placed in a glowing barrier created by Auren and Solian to shield it from external forces. Elandra carefully studied sealing spells, guided by Nyxara and Solara. Ignis reforged his flaming sword, its blade burning brighter than ever. Thalios summoned divine water from the ocean's depths, ready to quench any destructive fire. Before setting out, Auren addressed the group, his voice resolute. Today we fight not just for our mission. We fight for hope, for light, and for everything we cherish. Malgrath will stand no chance against the power of unity. The gods nodded, their eyes blazing with determination. They were ready to step into the final battle, not just to protect the world, but to prove that light always triumphs over darkness. Chapter 49. The Surprise Attack. Morning in Solara's natural forest was serene and pristine. Birds sang in harmony with the babbling brook, painting a picture of tranquility. But the peace was short-lived. The sky darkened abruptly as black clouds blotted out the sun. From afar, a cacophony of roars echoed, like thousands of anguished cries. Umbra, the demon of shadows, led a spectral army cloaked in chilling black mist. These ghostly figures, with cold, white eyes, surged forward like apparitions. From the opposite direction came Nerith, gaunt and exuding toxic fumes. His army of plague-ridden creatures left a trail of decay wherever they stepped. Solara stood in the heart of the forest, feeling the pain of nature as the dark entities swept through. She raised her hand, summoning protective magic. Now, none shall destroy this place, she declared. Solara swiftly commanded the ancient trees to awaken, their roots rising to form barriers. She summoned spirit wolves, their glowing blue forms charging to confront the shadow army. Descending from above, Zephyra, her delicate wings shimmering in the dim light, called out, Solara, I will assist you. Her voice was resolute. Zephyra conjured whirlwinds that swept away Umbra's black mist. As light pierced through, the specters began to dissolve. Yet Umbra was far from defeated. From a distance, he summoned a storm of darkness, engulfing the entire area. This place will belong to eternal darkness! Umbra bellowed, his glowing eyes cutting through the mist. Solara and Zephyra combined their powers to create a protective barrier around the sanctuary. Zephyra's wind intertwined with Solara's nature magic, forming a strong shield that halted the Dark Army's advance. Meanwhile, Nerith continued to spread his toxic fumes, causing the surrounding vegetation to wither. Elandra arrived, holding an ancient scroll in her hands. Light from her spell temporarily sealed Nerith's poisonous aura. Do you think your feeble light can stop me? Nerith sneered, releasing a powerful wave of poison. Elandra was pushed back, but quickly rose to her feet, her determination unshaken. I will not let you destroy this place, she shouted, activating a magic circle to trap Nerith and halt his advance. However, Nerith's strength proved overwhelming. Breaking free from the seal, he charged at Elandra, his eyes filled with fury. As Nerith prepared to strike, a blinding light descended from a distant mountain. Auren appeared, the eternal torch in his hand shining brilliantly. Darkness can never triumph over light, Auren proclaimed, his voice echoing with authority. He unleashed the spell, Summoning of Dawn, sending a radiant wave that swept away Umbra's shadowy mist. Umbra howled in agony as his dark shroud dissipated. I will return, he screamed, before vanishing into the shadows. Auren moved to shield Elandra from Nerith's attack. You do not belong here, he said, casting a powerful light that forced Nerith to retreat. Realizing he couldn't win, Nyxara withdrew with his army.
When the battle ended, Solara's sanctuary lay in ruins. The ancient trees were scorched, and the once clear streams were now murky. Solara knelt, her heart aching for the forest's suffering. "We protected this place, but the price was too high," she said, her voice breaking. Auren placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Life will recover. You've done well, Solara." Zephyra approached, her gentle breeze scattering the ashes. "Nature has an incredible power to heal. We'll help you restore it." While cleaning up the temple ruins, Alondra noticed a scorched stone wall revealing ancient symbols. She approached, placing her hand on it, and felt a strange energy emanating. "What is this?" she asked, her eyes filled with curiosity.
From a distance, Solian stepped forward, studying the markings intently. "This is a clue to the ultimate weapon," he said, his voice grave. The group exchanged glances, their eyes a mix of hope and apprehension. Auren nodded solemnly. "We don't have time to waste. We must find this weapon before Malgrath makes his move." Quote, "Welcome to Fantasy Realms. Enjoy the story, and thank you for your support." Chapter 50, The First Step of the Counterattack. After discovering ancient inscriptions etched on the scorched walls of Solara's Temple of Nature, the gods gathered to unravel their meaning. The light from Solian's eternal hourglass illuminated the inscriptions, causing them to glow vividly, as if coming to life. Solian stood silently for a long time, his eyes bright, as though peering through the currents of time. "These symbols are part of an ancient language. They describe a stronghold deep within the land of darkness, where Malgrath's power is concentrated. It's the only path to confront him directly." Zephyra crossed her arms, a gentle breeze swirling around her. "But how can we enter such a place without walking into a trap?" Auren stepped forward, the eternal torch in his hand brightening the space. "We have no other choice. If we don't act now, Malgrath will complete his plan of destruction." Alondra, though uneasy, held an ancient scroll in her hands. She sensed a connection between the scroll and the inscriptions. "This scroll might be the key. I'll figure out how to use it to open the gateway to that place." At the summit of the highest hill, where time and space intertwined, the gods gathered around Solian. He placed the eternal hourglass on the ground, forming a circle of silvery light. "When the gate opens, we will enter a realm where time does not follow our rules. Each minute there could mean hours here," Solian warned. With a wave of his hand, he reversed the flow of sand within the hourglass. Its light flared, creating a massive vortex in the air. "The gate is ready. But remember, do not let doubt or fear take hold," Solian said, his gaze sweeping across the group. The gods stepped through the gate, each step bringing an unfamiliar sensation. The world around them transformed from warm light to a shadowy expanse, where the sky burned red, and the cracked earth released toxic fumes. Barely had the group adjusted when they were ambushed by Malgrath's massive shadow army. Twisted creatures with flaming eyes surged from all directions, their grotesque forms exuding a palpable menace. Ignis charged forward first, his flaming sword blazing fiercely, creating a fiery barrier to protect the group. Zephyra used her wind magic to repel waves of attackers, but the sheer number overwhelmed them. At the center, Nyxara harnessed her shadow powers to create illusions that disoriented the enemy. "They have no clear weakness. We need to coordinate better," she shouted. Solara summoned massive roots from the earth to ensnare the creatures. Yet for every enemy destroyed, more seemed to rise, stronger and more relentless. "We can't keep this up forever," Ignis roared, his fiery eyes burning brighter. As the gods struggled against the relentless onslaught, Alondra stood at the rear, opening the ancient scroll. She read aloud the ancient incantations, her voice resonating across the battlefield. A brilliant beam of light burst forth from the scroll, enveloping the area in a radiant glow. The shadow army froze, unable to advance any further. "Well done, Alondra!" Nyxara shouted as she defended Alondra from sudden counterattacks. But the spell drained Alondra's strength rapidly. She began to breathe heavily, her hands trembling. "I can't hold it much longer." "You've done enough. Leave the rest to us," Auren said, his eyes shining with determination. Auren stepped forward, raising the artifact fragment embedded in the eternal torch. The fragment's light erupted into a protective barrier surrounding the gods. Even the formidable shadow army could not penetrate the barrier. "Light will always be the bane of darkness," Auren declared, his voice ringing with conviction. Ignis and Zephyra, seized the opportunity to launch a counteroffensive. Ignis's flaming sword cleaved through the shadow creatures, while Zephyra's whirlwind tore through their ranks. Thalios summoned a torrential downpour, weakening the enemy forces further. "This is our chance to advance!" he shouted. After repelling the shadow army, the gods pushed deeper into the desolate land. At last, they arrived before a colossal gate, etched with glowing crimson symbols radiating ominous energy. Solien stepped forward, raising the eternal hourglass. "This gate leads to the heart of Malgrath's stronghold. Beyond lies his domain, where his power is at its peak. Prepare yourselves." Elandra stared at the gate, her eyes filled with resolve. Auren placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, his voice calm and steady. "You've done well. Now, we face this together, not just with strength, but with trust." The group exchanged determined glances. No doubts remained, no hesitation lingered. They stepped forward, ready to confront the greatest challenge of their journey.